Hello again everybody and welcome back to the channel. Attempt number 2, I forgot to press a little button there, so thanks everybody for waiting, and a very warm welcome back to all of our bronze, silver and gold frequent flyers as always as well. 2 minutes delayed, so thanks for waiting folks. We're here at Corfu, Lima Golf Kilo Romeo, north west Greece, with some really good freeware scenery, all the links for which are in the description, and we're here on stand on VATSIM with the flybywire A32NX as well. So a little different today. We're doing a Flight Sim Association webinar, and it's a dual stream across the platforms, and joined by a couple of folks as well on stand as well. We're also joined over in the States by Evan, one of the co-founders at Flight Sim Association, and while I jump into the flight deck and start setting a few things up, I will leave you with Evan to introduce himself. So a very warm welcome to you, Evan. Hope you're okay.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Luke. Pleasure to be online with you and doing something that's also new for us at Flight Simulation Association. We've been around for just a couple of months now, done 3 or 4 different webinars of our own, but nothing quite like this. So really glad that you reached out to us to come up with this concept, and we're now here live on Flight Simulation Association's website, on our Facebook page, and in addition, of course, here on the YouTube channel, and looking forward to answering your questions and chatting a little bit more once we get everything up and running. So as you're getting the airplane set up, I'll just give folks a bit of a background on me and what we're doing today. Cool. If you're watching here on Flight Simulation Association's website through our webinars or on our Facebook Live, feel free to send in a question for captains via the chat, for first officers through the website. We'll be asking those questions to Luke as we go, and of course, he'll be interacting with his followers on YouTube as well, answering their questions in real time. So we can watch this in all kinds of different places, which is kind of fun. And one of the big things we're trying to do with Flight Sim Association is just help connect the community in some of the cases where people may not have discovered others. A lot of our webinars on FSA are all about people who don't have their own following. So they may be somebody who's built their own home cockpit out of real airline parts. They don't have a YouTube channel. They don't necessarily go on social media, but they really wanted to share that with the community. So we've got that coming up, for example, on June 3rd. Someone who really wouldn't be able to, I don't think, put together a really cool presentation and share it with anyone without having that following. Cool. On the other hand, in cases like this, we love to work with existing content creators like Luke to just give folks at FSA a bit of a taste as to what happens on their channels, so that our members can discover even more great flight simulation content. Just a very quick bit of background on me before I hand things over to Luke and we kind of get going on to today's stream. What we're trying to do at Flight Sim Association is really just help the community get connected, and that's specifically a mission around new simmers. So it started out as a process of trying to figure out how can we make it a little easier for a new flight simmer, someone who has never really gotten into this hobby of ours, to understand what's out there in the community. And it also expanded into a couple of things we're doing for experienced simmers that we'll get into over the course of the next few minutes here. For me, as Luke mentioned, I'm in North America. I'm actually in Canada, and outside of the sim community, I fly the Embraer 175 for a regional. Don't know anything at all about flying in Europe, so I'm excited to watch along with this, and I also don't fly the Airbus, so I'm going to be learning just along with you guys here when it comes to dealing with the Airbus and dealing with what we have with the circling approach coming up in a few minutes. So I'm mostly here to just sort of listen in, maybe provide the odd bit of feedback, and once we do get up in the air, I'll ask Luke some questions about his background, how he got into this, and how he built this incredible channel and following in just a few months. So I think that's about the introduction for me. Looking forward to answering your questions, comments, and chatting with you over the next little while. And I'll pass things back over to Luke to get us in the air, and then we can jump in from there.
Awesome. Sounds good. It's nice to do something different anyway, that's for sure. And it's been a little while since I've been in the Airbus and had to do a full MCDU setup as well. So hopefully you guys watching are enjoying that. You'd have seen a minute ago while Evan was introducing the stream today, I've been inputting the routing manually. So we've added in the legs from Corfu LGKR. You just click the left button there and it enters the lateral revisions page, and you could add in your next waypoints, but of course as well you can add in airways too. So from PARNA we could add in airways by entering the airways option, as you guys have just seen. What I want to do using the EFB is change, he says, as he tries to remember where it is, dispatch fuel. There we go. Change our fuel load today, because we only need a block of 4,800 kilos, and we can type that in here. 4837 to be precise. And if I hit play, it just defuels the aeroplane whilst we talk, and it will balance all the tanks for us as well, which is really cool. I think we've got Wesley and a few other guys flying along as well, and good morning to Tony Flight Train, Wesley, Dylan, Pretender, Captain Reese, Nick T, David A and William as well, of course, all of you guys channel members, and everybody else tuning in and watching as well. As always, if you've got any questions at all with either the flight today, or any questions you'd like to hand over to Evan from Flight Simulator Association, then pop them in the live chat and we'll get them answered. Random's asking, is it true experimental version by Flybywire team is discontinued? Half and half. So they've frozen that currently because they're working on LNAV and VNAV. Let's do that, 0.2. Whoops. And one of the things that's that they've basically done is they've switched off the experimental branch, so it does not get updated any further, in order to just going to print out some of the metars in order to work on that in secret, because there's a lot of things to fix really with that before it goes public, and they of course don't want to release something that people are going to have problems with. The commentator, good afternoon. We'll wait for our company message there that's popped up on the eCam, and we can then read the metars. If we hit print with the fly-by-wire mod, it comes out of the printer down at the bottom here. Takes a little while, but it's slow in real life apparently, we've been informed by some real Airbus pilots. It also makes a horrendous noise as well, but that's not yet sounded and modelled in. So there's our METAR for Corfu, and we can also see the METAR for Samos as well, and that's going to be quite tricky actually by the looks of that. So currently 1150 Zulu, so a little while ago this was generated, winds of 140 at 5 knots. Ceiling and visibility okay, 25 degrees Celsius for temperature, and the dew point 17 degrees Celsius with a QNH of 1018. To set our altimeters. Pop flight director on as well. So on the init B page we've got 4.8. There's still defueling there with the ECAM memo. I'll leave the zero fuel weight calculations and things for a little while. Taxi can stay at 0.2 as well. Max is saying they're making some good progress on the A380 as well. They are indeed, yes. There's a lot actually going on that I can't talk about, sadly, with the A380. But all very exciting. We've got Greece Athens radar online as well on VATSIM, which is really cool. 129675. So let's tune to him.
5034, climb flight level 390.
Flying level 390, Lale 5034, and we request 3 minutes out of cockpit.
Order. Condor 1 Fox Mike, on heading 300, climb flight level 180.
I'm heading 300, climb level 180, Condor 1 Fox Mike.
Top Swift 9900, descent altitude 3000, QNH RPM 1017.
So this guy is controlling
Descent altitude 3000 feet, QNH 1017, Top Swift 9900.
all of Greece basically, effectively all of Greece in its entirety. We are going to get our clearance through him. You can tell whenever people are on different simulators with a different scenery as well. Everybody's parked in a mess. So there's no ATIS for Corfu, but we know that the QNH is 1018, and we can use that for our clearance that we need to obtain from the controller. If I show you guys Navigraph, there you go. We're expecting a departure via PARNA, and there's a couple of There's a couple of different options, and the one we're expecting today is the PARNA 1 Bravo, and that's departing south with a left turn after 500 foot, max 210 knots in the turn, 15-degree angular bank, all on the charts as you can see, to then intercept the radial of 138 degrees to the Kirkara VOR, which we need to tune. So 114.7. Let's put that into VOR 1 and we can line up 138 as a course and do that.
Turkey Delta Echo 1, right onto Alpha, Alpha 7 Hotel.
So we've got our VOR for Kirkara. We can also type in KRK and add that in manually at the top there and refresh that track to 138.
Hotel Charlie Delta 4 stamp Alpha 09.
So funny to meet Evan here by North American Air Traffic Controller here on VATSIM. So we see so many different procedures, and whenever I see any of the charts anywhere in Europe pretty much with like the 1 Bravo, 1 Kilo, such a weird thing for me because those are all airport and runway specific, whereas in the US we just tend to have one single procedure, maybe even for the entire airport, or sometimes there might be multiple stars, but they all incorporate all the runways. So the idea of like 1 Bravo, 1 Kilo is just such a foreign concept to me.
Yeah, it's a little odd because if they use certain runways will have a certain letter associated with them.
Yeah.
That's a bit better. Radar's shouting a little bit, so I'm just trying to sort that out. Reese, how do you determine what to put in the course block? So on the charts, as I was saying, that radial of 138's there. Effectively, you draw a line to that VOR. It was a radial from Goritza, actually, I should say. Naughty me. So from Goritza 1088. Glad you asked now, I wouldn't have noticed that. So that's the one we want the course for. I'm going to switch those over. So 108.8. It's picked up Goritza anyway, and course there of 138. So you basically draw a line from the VOR station out, and that would be a radial. So you can see on the charts back there that that's what we had, and I'm going to refresh that one to Kirkara 114.7. So just switch them over, and we need to get our clearance. So without further ado, I've got everything ready to go. Our call sign today, folks, is Osprey 165, which is the channel call sign. And type code is A20N for the Airbus A320neo. When you log into VATSIM, and we're at stand 4 at Corfu. Athens radar, good afternoon, Osprey 165 A320neo at Corfu stand 4, QNH 1018. Request IFR clearance to Samos.
Osprey 165, hello, good afternoon, clear destination Samos, runway 16, PARNA 1 Bravo departure, climb flight level 80 easily, and squawk 6767.
Cleared to Samos, PARNA 1 Bravo departure, runway 16, initial climb flight level 80, squawk 6767, Osprey 165.
Osprey 165, is that correct?
So, let's get that in the box. 6767. Make sure in this as well you flick predictive wind shear to auto. That's important in this, otherwise you get the aeroplane shout at you when you try and move. How are we doing on the refuel? 4820, good stuff. APU bleed. We come off external power. Okay, those packs switch. We've set our initial altitude of 8,000 feet there too. Nick, what's the VOR2 that you added? That's Kirkara. Eric, how do you differentiate between a course and a heading? That's a good question. So you've got two things really to bear in mind. You've got track. You've got track and you've got heading. Track is the direction the aeroplane is going, and heading is the direction that the aeroplane is facing. So the best way to explain that is if you're flying into a crosswind, the aeroplane's not going to be going in a straight line. You're going to have the aeroplane fly facing into wind, but even though you're facing maybe to the left 10 degrees on a heading of 070, for example, if that crosswind is pushing the aeroplane, then actually your track is 080. So that's two differences really. Track FPA is going to be vital for us, that track mode, when we're going to be flying that circling procedure as we get a bit closer. Let's prime those VORs. So VOR 1 and 2 on, and you can see there, Goritza. If we go to nav, VOR mode, sorry, you can see that course needle that we've tuned in. So when we're trying to track that radial, we can use that if we want, but what I will actually do is try and align that white needle. So the back of the white needle needs to be against 138, and that's when we know that we're flying that radial quite nicely. Nick T. The other one is Goritza, which is a VOR station at Corfu Airport. What else do we need to do then, prep-wise? That's all set. We can cycle the V-speeds. It puts it in itself. And we can cheat in the init B page by just clicking that and clicking it again. I went out of range. That's wrong. Right. Let's just rebalance the aeroplane very quickly. 16. That refuel there completely threw the aeroplane out of balance. 460, 460. Ah, brilliant. That's just a bug that we're dealing with here. So let me just change this. Wesley, thanks for the tip, and yeah, of course, welcome Evan. So we're going to have to use the UI menu here just to set our fuel. 4837. That's as close as we're going to get. 4.9. So we'll just change that.
I wish it was this fast in real life. One of my colleagues had a flight where they overfueled his airplane. They basically completely filled the tanks, put the airplane into an overweight situation where they couldn't actually move. And so they were stuck on the ramp, and I think the defueling in the Embraer is like a 2-hour process, so that was nice.
Oh man, that's long.
Yeah. It's a maintenance thing, and then you gotta get a couple fuel trucks. It's not the best experience. There was a question also from Kai about what is a radial, I think.
What is a radial? So, I'll show you the charts. It's probably the quickest, or the easiest way to sort of explain that. If you see where Goritza is, you've got that big circle there with the arrow going all the way to Goritza. That's the VOR that we've tuned. And you'll then see 138 next to that, from 138 degrees, and a line that goes then out. So if you've got two options here because of the way the charts are scripted. If you draw a line from the center of that Goritza VOR out from it to the Kirkora VOR, that is on a radial of 138. So if you were going to fly over the Goritza VOR and fly past and away from it, you would be lining up your back of the VOR needle to show 138 degrees. Probably not explaining this the best way.
Yeah, I think you got it. Just basically just a line straight out from the VOR. As if you set your airplane over that VOR and then you follow a ground track of 138 degrees from that VOR heading in the example here to the southeast. That's what a radial is. This is the old school navigation that we all used to use back 20 or 30 years ago before the advent of GPS. It's all we had.
Yeah, so the radial was flying away from the VOR, isn't it? And a
radial is always out from the VOR.
Yeah.
Now you can track a radial either direction.
Of course,
you could track it inbound, in this case, or you could track it inbound or outbound.
6. Just adding in the departure at the moment. So we've been told to expect runway 16, and we've been told with the PARNA 1 Bravo departure, which is just there in the middle. So we click that, and of course we can see that added into the flight plan there. So a little bit of a kink as we take off. We've got the latest Navigraph nav data installed as well, with the air rack from the other day. And I think we're almost ready to go. Once we get airborne, we'll look at adding in our approach data and the actual arrival procedure into Samos as well. Commentator, yes, basically. That's a great way of explaining it. It's basically a heading relative to a fixed point. Yeah. Or, well, it's a track, so a heading would not take into account wind, whereas a track does. God, Corfu's really busy. I think we're good to rock and roll. So we've got our initial climb set. I need to make a note of that initial climb speed of 210 knots for that turn. And let's just check the overhead panel. Let's pop these on because we're going to be pushing and starting. Bleeds. Right, push and start time, I think.
Thunder 6 Victor Hotel, wind 140 degrees 5 knots, runway 16, clear takeoff.
Osprey 165, stand 4 at Corfu, fully ready, request push and start.
Osprey 165, start push approved, facing north, QNH Corfu 1018.
Push start facing north and QNH 1018, Osprey 165. So because he's dealing with a lot of people, and he's dealing with all of Athens, or all of Greece I should say, for me, I always make sure that I let them know what airport we are at, so he knows.
That is so helpful. We get people sometimes who call us when we're working Boston Center. Sometimes they'll call us from New York or even another airport outside of our coverage area, and all they've given is their call sign. And then sometimes I haven't filed a flight plan, and I'm looking like trying to find them because you're trying to be helpful. You'd like to just say, hey,
yes,
you know, here's the situation, but it is hard to find when folks are on the ground, so that really does help.
Nick, from our conversation earlier on Discord, when you're starting the aeroplane, you mentioned your nose wheel steering disconnect. This is how you sort of go through your startup procedure. So we've got all the pumps and everything on, as I've shown you guys already, and as we're pushing back, ignition mode start, engine 2 start for the A320neo, and then you can see the N2 rising. Eventually, once it starts to spit fuel into the aeroplane engines, then that will start to kick the M1 up as well, and then you'll see the ignition temperatures rise and everything else as well. You have to leave, as I was saying to you earlier, Nick, you have to leave ignition mode on to start, otherwise you're just ticking the engine over basically. The only thing is, pushback with my rudder pedals is never smooth lately. Love this freeware scenery, it's one of my favourites. It's absolutely packed. Samos will be just as busy.
That's really nice. That's is that just on flightsim.to?
Yes, so that's available. Yeah, flightsim.to has got Samos as well. So there's a payware Samos, but there's also a freeware Samos on flightsim.to.
That is really nice for freeware.
So stop the pushback. Brandon says Boston controllers are always on top of their game and always nice flying there.
He must not have flown with me recently.
Yes, Nick, yeah. So I was using FS2 Cruise Pushback Express for that. But for pushback, in here, I'll show you. You've got to try and turn left and right when you push back. So instead of just pushing back straight, he's told us to push and start facing north. So we've got to make sure that we are facing north, which is up that direction towards the mountains in this instance. Once the engine's started, you'll see it come up with an available sign, like so. Once that's there and the engines are stabilised, then your ignition mode start goes onto mode norm. And then you can go through your flow in the overhead, turning your APUs off and everything else. So, Corfu's nice and easy. Effectively, it's a straight line down to the end. And that is it. But still read back whatever the controllers give you guys. Make sure your QNH is set. Make sure your transponder's set. Your initial altitudes and things are set as well. And I'm going to set my speed constraint of 210 now, so I don't have to fiddle with that as we take off. Flaps 1 for departure today. Osprey 165, request taxi. Oh, every time. Osprey 165, request taxi. I think we've been over talked twice now. I'll just get flaps 1 plus F. Once you see that track there stop moving and the little blue square disappear, that goes green, then you can press takeoff config and you get your takeoff checks. Auto brake max. Spoilers arm. Osprey 165, request taxi. Oh, for goodness sake. Every time. He's really busy, which doesn't help.
I do appreciate how audio for VATSIM has really fixed the lag, though. It used to be back when we were using the old voice system that you'd be stepping up people all the time because of that delay, and at least now it's pretty much, you know, if you're getting stepped on, it's because it's busy.
Osprey 165, request taxi.
3165, taxi Alpha, hold point Alpha 3, runway 16.
Taxi Alpha, hold point Alpha 3, runway 16, Osprey 165. Little bit of power. Ooh, gently touch the brakes. There we go. We've got our taxi lights on anyway. We can press the cabin crew all call. And that's for our cabin ready. There's Wesley and Aegean. So we've got our cabin ready status there on the ECAM, and takeoff memos are all green, so no blue. Quick check of the ground charts for Alpha 3, and it's the one right at the end. And we make sure I've got my PARNA 1 Bravo departure charts ready as well. So after departure at 500 feet, at or above 500 feet, a manual turn to the left to intercept the radial of 138 degrees. And then we fly 12 miles to the Kirkara VOR before heading out to PARNA. Had to reinstall Windows the other day, and I feel like all sorts of minor settings have all disappeared.
The dreaded Windows reinstall.
It was horrendous.
I think this is a little bit easier with the community folder now. Back when the P3D days, I remember I used to have like a separate folder that had all my add-ons in it, so that when I had to reinstall Windows, which was like a regular thing back then, that I would have them all ready. But it was like a 3-day process when you had to deal with all those separate add-on installers and everything. It's gotten so much easier now.
Yeah. Well, I've just started using add-on linker, and that's definitely helping.
Yeah.
But at some point, I try my model matching and things that I do. I try and get it looking good on a stream. I ended up with 479 folders, and
Oh my god.
yeah, my boot times, even with quite a rapid system, my boot times were touching 10 minutes, which is just too long. So add-ons link has been an absolute saviour.
I have a question from Dana if we have time for it now. I don't know if you want to do it later.
Yeah, go for it.
Question about sort of just saying I've got FMS phobia, saw the Jetliner edition of FS Academy that got released, thinking about that. And the question is the fly-by-wire mod to the A320 basically the same as the Zibo mod is to the 737NX plane?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, but in its most basic sense, the fly-by-wire A32NX is effectively the MSFS version of the Zibo 737, so it's a huge community-driven project. I've been a QA tester for them since September, so I've tested almost 200 pull requests on their GitHub for loads of different things that have been brought onto the system, and they've got contributors well in excess of 200 or so developers all working on bits, and it's amazing for such a freeware project. Now, of course, it's been hard forked, so it's not in a separate. It's not part of the default A320 now. It's a separate aircraft, which is really good. Okay.
And I'm actually surprised, but pleasantly surprised, that Microsoft has kind of not only just allowed it, but I think been like a supporter of it. You know, that's the type of thing that I would have expected from X-Plane, that, you know, sure, they would be open to development. I think a lot of us, when Microsoft first announced the new sim, were kind of unsure of what it was going to look like, but it's cool to see that they're so supportive of the community, and like you can actually see them using actual mods that they've downloaded off flightsim.to and some of their live streams too, which is really cool.
Yeah, and Fly-by-wire, they've got a really good relationship with the Sobo at the moment, so they're helping test stuff for tweaks of updates. Osprey 165 ready for departure.
Osprey 165, wind 230 grade 5 knots, runway 16 seconds.
Clear takeoff, Osprey 165. Entering the active, get the strobes on, and all the lights. Yeah, they've got a really good relationship at the moment with the Sobo, and that has helped progress the mod significantly. Those of you watching on the YouTube channel, if you've got any questions for Evan, far away, anything about FSA, how it works and the accounts and things like that, then pop them in the live chat and we'll get round to that. A little bit of power, 40%. Ooh. Yeah, my rudder settings have definitely changed since the install. Up to flex. SRS is on the PFD, that's illuminated, and our thrust is set. Once we get to 80 knots in the Airbus, you can see my sticks down at the moment. 80 to 100 knots, you gently ease the pressure off the nose wheel and bring the stick back to neutral. V1, rotate. Positive rate, go up. And climb straight ahead to 500 foot. Which is now. And then commencing the left turn. And around about now, we could turn the autopilot on as well by the looks of it. He says, as it then turns right ever so slightly. Learn iCodes with Rish is asking, how does FSA work?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I can jump into that. Has anyone here in the chat that's watching, do you remember seeing a picture that I wish I had never created that said something
Firefly level
big is
310,
coming?
Osprey 165. Sorry, talked over you.
No, go ahead.
Leave a climb, so pop it back into that climb detent there. And now we're trying to fly that radial, so Goritza is that single arrow, which is there. And we want to make sure that line goes to 138, which is around about here. And then we know we're flying that radial out. So past that S speed, so flaps go to 0, and now we can disarm the ground spoilers, and we're going to accelerate up. We can continue up now to our usual speeds, 250 below 10,000.
So Luke, interrupt me as you need to. Flight Simulation Association, you can go visit the website right now, flightsimassociation.com. We launched this out of feedback we've gotten from a show that I run called Flight Sim Expo. If anyone's ever been to Cosford or been to Lelystad for the annual Flight Sim conferences, Flight Sim Expo is one that happens in North America. And it was predominantly, we saw a lot of people coming to that event, brand new simmers, never seen anything about flight simulation before, but they were real pilots, or they were just super interested in flight simulation for whatever reason, and they may not necessarily be into YouTube and Twitch. And back in 2019 in Orlando, I don't think the YouTube and Twitch communities were quite as big as they've gotten over the past several months. So a lot of people were saying, how do I get started in home simulation? What can I do? So we tried to put together a whole lot of resources for those new simmers and put together lists of some of the most popular freeware, most popular payware, best payware providers, and even some content creators, YouTube folks, and stuff like this. So that's the main part behind the project. A lot of that is designed for new simmers, but for those who are experienced simmers in the community already, what we're also trying to do is just offer a whole bunch of great discounts. So we've got the biggest collection of hardware discounts. If you're looking to, for example, purchase the Honeycomb yoke, if they ever get stock, you'll be able to get free shipping on that. If you're looking to purchase stuff from Thrustmaster, from Real Sim Gear, from Stay Level Avionics, any of those things that you see in a lot of those, like, panel setups where there's GPSs or actual physical CDUs, we've got a pile of discounts on that type of thing, and then a bunch of different sceneries, aircraft, 20% off, basically the whole Orbit collection. So a whole bunch of different discounts. Some of those are available totally free. In fact, the majority of our community is available for free, and then there's also a paid subscription that you can use to unlock some additional discounts. Totally realize that the paid subscription is not something that everyone is interested in. That's cool. We don't actually need that. It's really for those who are getting started. And for experienced simmers, we'd welcome you to come on, create a free first officer account. I'll talk a little bit about more some of the sort of live events that we run, but I don't want to get too much in the way of your flying here, Luke.
That's all right. It's good to have. We were discussing before. Proceed direct Kilo Oscar Romeo, Osprey 165. We were talking before about the direction that Flight Sim Association was looking to go in the future and things like that. And where in the next year or so, where do you see Flight Sim Association moving towards? Where do you see it in a year's time?
Yeah, for folks who are already into flight simulation and who are already into basically flying and know about add-ons, what we're really trying to do is just bring in these kind of unique live events that maybe aren't happening so much. So for example, yesterday we hosted Aerosoft. I think it may have been the first time that Matthias from Aerosoft, who's their product and customer support manager, was actually ever doing a live stream, probably. And he talked about basically the future of add-ons in Microsoft Flight Simulator for Xbox. So looking at things like what is the future of add-ons, how are Xbox controllers and how is the Xbox platform going to manage things like the airplane that you're flying right now, what's that going to look like? Yeah. And he gave some tidbits into how the Aerosoft Airbus structure is going to be moved over into Microsoft Flight Sim. They've obviously started on the CRJ. He talked about the plan moving forward would be to do the CRJ9/1000, following that going into the Twin Otter, and following that doing the A330. So basically what we're trying to do is get people like Aerosoft, who might just typically be used to posting on the forums, into this live streaming world so that they can engage with you, and maybe even expanding that by doing stuff like a cross promotional type thing where you have Orbix, Aerosoft, Navigraph, maybe some of the top developers, maybe even the Flybywire team would want to come on. And I'd be really interested in watching a panel of like 6 or 7 of the top freeware and payware developers talk about like what's the future of Microsoft Flight Sim, or what's the future of all 3 of our civil flight simulation platforms. That's the type of thing that we're trying to do as we move forward.
Nice.
And I think there's a question about refundability. So for those who purchase a subscription, it's $3 a month. So we typically don't offer a refund on that. Once you've like paid your subscription, the theory is that you've had access to the discounts. Nothing in FSA is, you have to like buy it to see it. You can see exactly what you're getting before you make a purchase. So it's not like we're asking you to pay us money and then you download an airplane and then you might not like it. If you are interested in subscription, we show you exactly what's available. You can see which discounts there are. You can find out exactly what content, not that there's much content that's behind a paywall, basically everything's free anyway, but you can see all that. And then if you choose to make a purchase, you know exactly what you're getting. If for some reason you're not satisfied with that, you can always reach out to us, but a subscription is not a requirement to be part of the site. There was a version of this initially where that was part of the process, and that's been completely changed based on feedback we've heard from the community and a lot of good points that came up right after the launch.
Yeah. I'm just printing out the METAR for Samos in case it's changed again. So we should be in the cruise pretty quickly now, to be fair. 15,000 feet at the moment. Cruise of 31,000 feet today. 3608 still. We've got a crosswind for approach. Doctor on board, hello to you. Jake says, don't know what FSA is. So Flight Sim Association, I've put the link actually below your question, and you can sign up, have a little look at the website, dig around. There's loads of discounts, as Evan was just explaining all there. Just pretty much just giving a whole précis of what Flight Sim Association is about, and it's quite good. Loads of discounts, as he was saying, Orbix and things like that as well, across loads of different simulators too. So for those of you without MSFS, you might have X-Plane for example, there's discounts on Orbix and stuff on there as well.
And again, realize that right now, I'll be quite honest, like, you're not going to get like 90% off. You're not going to get a crazy good discount. What we were going for is more breadth. So if you think about someone who's brand new to flight simulation, so someone who maybe is a pilot and they've maybe looking to get their instrument rating, they are thinking, I've heard so much about I can create a home flight sim to help my pilot training and help my proficiency, but how do I actually do that? What we've tried to do is say, here's a bunch of discounts that the best developers, so if you're looking for a Cessna 172 in P3D, you go to A2A and you get a discount on that. It's like, I'm going to make this purchase for the first time, so it kind of makes sense. That's what we're trying to go for. As we move things forward, I know people love discounts. Obviously, what we're trying to do with the developers is say, well, look, we've got more than 3,000 members who've joined in the first couple of months. We hope that's going to continue. Let's give us a bigger discount now. And I think as the community recognizes what this concept is, as more people sign up for it, that helps me be able to go back to someone like Orbix and say, okay, that 20% off discount, let's have that stack. So the next time that they do a 50% off sale, you might get 70% off. That's the kind of thing that we're working towards. But again, that's going to take a lot of time. We've got great relationships with many of the top developers in the community, and we're very grateful for that. It takes a lot of work and a lot of people to actually help push them into giving those better discounts. So for someone who's looking to join right now, I'd say the free account is great. And if you're looking to make a purchase on, say, a new yoke, and we've got a discount that's appealing to you, subscribe for $3 and you get your discount. And then if you don't want to keep paying, there's certainly no need to. We, of course, appreciate the support, and I'll talk more about what we do with that money. But we're very happy to have folks join as free members. And again, the more folks who come on and who participate in our webinars and who participate in our free accounts, that makes it so much easier for me to go back to developers and say, all right, let's work on getting us a bigger discount. Got a question from Brett on the Flight Simulation Association website. Brett is a first officer with us, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but I probably do. When can I pre-order Microsoft Flight Simulator on Xbox? I see it's in the store, but there's no price. Any ideas on when that might be released?
I'm not sure. I think it was supposed to be through the summer, wasn't it? I believe.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
I heard June at one point, and then more recently we asked Matthias this question yesterday on the webinar, and Aerosoft thinks it's going to be something like the end of the summer, early fall. But that's only when the sim is going to come out, and you probably won't see major scenery or aircraft add-ons for Microsoft Flight Simulator Xbox until even later than that, because right now it's basically impossible to get an Xbox, and even then the version of MSFS on the Xbox that developers in our community don't have yet. So, if you're thinking about the Aerosoft Twin Otter or the CRJ, which they may never even port over to the Xbox version, that probably isn't until closer to the end of the year.
Nice.
Thanks, Brett, for the question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Rish has just signed up. Jacob's bookmarked at FSA as well. Good stuff, guys. Hope you find it all useful. Have you got any questions that you wanted to ask me? We'll be sent already soon, I think.
Chat a bit more about your background, and again, folks in the chat, feel free to chime in here as well. Luke, I was curious to know sort of how you got started in flight simulation and how you got started in streaming. That's a popular question that I ask. So I'm one of the folks who manages the pilot community at Boston Virtual Air TCC, and so I get to read applications from pilots from around the world when they choose to join our community, usually about 2 or 3 a week. And one of the questions is kind of like, how did you get started? So I read all these incredible stories about people, whether it was like, I've always wanted to do it. I read people who were blind or who are visually impaired. They've wanted to fly, but they of course can't actually fly, in most cases, real airplanes. That they got into the sim because it was a way that they could actually participate. They maybe lost their medical. So just love hearing stories about that. How did you get into flight simulation? Kind of what got you started?
So years ago, I used to be a flying instructor, a light aircraft, through an organisation in the UK called the Air Cadets. So sponsored by the Royal Air Force, and they paid for all the stuff basically. And I started off quite basic, learning how to fly, and then became an instructor. And at the time, I was getting into flight sim at the same time, and it was a good way for me to take some of the skills that I'd learned and then use it on some general aviation flying at the same time. But then I fell out of simming for about 10-15 years until Microsoft Flight Simulator came along, and the guys who watch me frequently will know that I ended up injuring myself quite significantly at work back in the summer. Broke my leg, broke my ankle, and it was in July, and it just so happened that a month later Microsoft Flight Simulator was releasing, and a best mate of mine that I used to fly with talked me into buying a whole new rig and buying the sim, and I've not really looked back. Spent the first couple of months just really enjoying flying in it, and spending a lot of time on the sim while I was sat in a cast at home, not able to do very much. And then I just randomly one day created a YouTube channel and just started putting a couple of random videos of flights on there. They weren't the best, I've got to say, but yeah, it was just something random that started from nothing really. And ever since, we've our first live stream was the first week of October, I think it was, and ever since we've exploded with the community behind the channel. Is fantastic. Loads of people watching, taking part, joining us in the flights, and it makes the sim experience really nice. We get 3 or 4 guys regularly fly with us when I stream, and it's just enjoyable to fly with a little community, and it's got me hooked again. Microsoft Flight Simulator, I mean, the graphics in the sim have really helped with it as well.
Yeah. Pretty man, thanks for the subscription. Appreciate the support. And yeah, I was just going to actually sort of ask you a little bit about VATSIM too, because that's something that I always advocate for. I talk to really a lot of simmers who just don't know about VATSIM, and like that may be shocking to some of the people on the stream here because it's like so ubiquitous amongst the streaming community. But there's a huge population of like GA people, general aviation pilots, who buy a simulator from a place like a pilot store, so a real world pilot shop where they sell charts and headsets. They buy a simulator and they think that's it, and they just fly in single player They've never gone online. They've never looked at YouTube. I talk to these people all the time, and they're like, wait, so there's a place I can go where I can talk to real human air traffic controllers like all the time, and it's just like, it's just totally mind-blowing to those people. And it's true. I mean, if you don't know how to search for VATSIM, like if you don't know that stuff like this exists, what do you Google to find VATSIM? So I'm curious, maybe you were part of VATSIM previously, or maybe it was your first time kind of when you got started in the most recent round, but how did you get into VATSIM? Kind of what brought you here?
I just wanted more immersion from the sim. Years and years ago, I remembered trying VATSIM out, and I could never really get it set up properly, so I just never really, I fell before I could walk. And Microsoft Flight Simulator, I think they announced with an official partnership with VATSIM, and from that, it just got me really thinking into trying to get into ATC and having that extra level of immersion again, and enjoy the sim as much as possible, really. And the first couple of times I was doing it, I'll be honest, I was so nervous, pressing the push to talk button, thinking I was going to make mistakes and do stuff, make mistakes and embarrass myself on the radio and things like that. But after a couple of sessions, I could not fly without VATSIM anymore, and I then decided that I should probably do some tutorials to help people get started on the network and get confident themselves with it as well, because besides a couple of videos that were hours long, there wasn't really anything that could help people get started for the new sim.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I was saying to you earlier, I think it's incredible what the sort of content creator community, folks like you, have done, making it so much more accessible to get into VATSIM. I remember when I was first starting out on the network, I was also terrified. This was actually in the FSX multiplayer days. So anyone remember GameSpy way back when? That's when I started in online flying. And the first time I connected to a sort of like a server or community in there, I think the first words I said on the radio were hello. Like, that's all I said, because that's just, I didn't have any clue what you were supposed to say.
Yeah.
And it took me maybe 3 or 4 months until I figured out back in FSX that there's actually a switch for nav and GPS, and that you can actually use the autopilot to follow the GPS. That was an incredible day for me. I was literally like using the heading bug to follow along the magenta line. But this is when we didn't have, like, literally we didn't have YouTube Live, we didn't have Twitch, and so to be able to sort of learn to fly was really on your own.
No, 1 Charlie arrival.
Totally changed
and go again with the last, please, Osprey 165. And VOR DME 09er, Osprey 165. So we've been given a slightly different approach to what I expected. Sorry to interrupt there.
Not at all.
So we're coming in via Ernil, and I was expecting the Ernil 2 Alpha, which is overflying the Samos VOR. Now we've been given Ernil 1 Charlie, which is a 14 DME arc. So we can kind of see what to expect here. We're going to have to request descent very soon as well. We've got a 50-odd knot tailwind pushing us along. So if we go LGSM, arrival, we can quickly change VOR via, and it was, instead of SAM, we want Delox now, which was on the charts as the initial approach fix. So that's gone on there. And our RadNav page, we need to track that Samos VOR. If we look at Navigraph, we're going to be coming in via Ernil, 7000, 16 DME, committing a right turn to intercept that 14 DME arc. And the arc's basically, imagine a circle around the airport, and then doing this approach here. So from Delox, we're then going to be flying at course of 358, or track of 358, sorry, directly up to the runway. And Samos is bizarre, because you fly directly up to the airport, you don't align with the runway at all, you end up flying a completely visual approach. And if I show you, there's no charts for it either anymore. So if I show you this other screen, it's a Google Chrome screen grab, if you like. There you go. Hopefully you can see that okay on the screen, folks. We're going to be flying directly up to the airport, and at 4 DME, 1850, which is our minimums, we're going to brake left, heading of 325 with autopilot off. We'll be flying it manually as we descend over a village, and it's going to be quite a tricky little approach. Hopefully you can see it nice and clearly. And we need to be over the shed with the white roof at 400 foot, apparently. So quite precise, particularly difficult because if we have to go around, we have to turn left very quickly, otherwise we enter Turkish airspace, and they don't like that because of political issues. Wesley, 7,000 for now, for transition. Let's request descent in a second, and 1,000, I'm going to set minimums 1,900. Because you can't do the smaller increments. 1880 is the MDA, so that's the closest we can get as we go higher than lower. And how far have we got here? So Ernil, 160. Oh, we've got plenty of time. So we've got those tuned in. Greg's asking, how did I become a controller on VATSIM? And is there much training? Yeah, there's quite a lot of training, and a very long waiting list depending on where you do it. So VATSIM UK, for example, you could be waiting 6 months just for the opportunity to start your training, and that can take up to 6 months as well.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart. You need to be very committed to it. There is an incredible amount of self-study that you need to do. You'll be reading plenty of material. Of course, you can watch streamers. There's lots of people who stream ATC as well, so they're great people to talk to. And a lot of the ATC process is dependent upon where you are. So if you're in North America, if you're in Europe, and even then within the different regions, there are different individual facilities, BACCs they're called in some places, ARTCCs in others, and everyone kind of has their own way of getting involved. And so in the US, there's different places where you can get trained almost right away, and you might be able to work a ground position at a pretty big airport in a matter of a couple of weeks. Yeah. And then, like we said, in the UK, it can be 6 or 7 months even just to begin the training. So it's definitely a lengthy process, but it's a lot of fun. And especially if you're somebody who's a real world pilot or somebody who has the opportunity to fly in real life, it's really cool to be able to actually hang out and control and sort of see the other side of what you might not see as a pilot. That's been something I've always appreciated.
Yeah. How long have you been flying as a pilot for then?
When did I start flying? Back in 2000 and... Yeah, geez, I didn't remember. That's a good question. I think it was 2008 I got my private license.
Nice.
I was flying recreationally for a couple of years at the time.
It's something that I wished I'd really stuck at and gone for. But I pretty much spent my entire childhood wanting to be an airline pilot, and just never really worked out for me. So simming is as close as I'll get, sadly.
You know, I was almost in that same boat. So I was a private pilot for a couple of years, working at a management consulting job, making a lot more money than I do now. And funnily enough, it was kind of a bit of a twist of fate. I was sitting in the office one day, and the way consulting worked, we kind of got on different projects. So you'd be in a different office kind of once every couple of weeks. And I happened to be at this office where I was sitting and watching out the window, the small planes take off and land in an airport. And I think beyond anything else, it was just that inspired me. So I literally did something kind of crazy. I quit my job, moved across the country, got my commercial license, really with no plan. Like, I thought maybe if this didn't work out, I might just go back to business, back to consulting. And I just lucked into this job flying Navos and King Airs at a small company out on the west coast of Canada. We did stuff, everything from Seattle International Airport up to just small gravel strips. It was crazy fun. And then from there moved on to the Embraer.
If you were to have a tip for anybody that wanted to become an airline pilot, what would you suggest? If you had any advice?
That's a good question. It's such a tough time right now in the aviation industry, right? So depending on where you are, you know, the recovery for COVID, if you're in the US, like, it's almost like back to normal right now. And other parts of the world are saying it might be 5 or 6 years. So 2 years ago, I would have said, no matter how old you are, you know, if you love it and you have a passion for it, go for it and do what you love, and, you know, the money will follow, the lifestyle will follow. It's going to take some time. Now, you know, there's groups out there, pilot unions, for the first time ever, kind of saying, I don't know if it's the right decision to embark on an aviation training career right now because of what's going on, and it's a terrible time in the industry in a lot of places. Yeah. So my advice would be to think about it. I mean, it's very cool. It's a really interesting lifestyle. It's the most fun I've ever had in the job by far. However, you know, right now it's just such a tough industry. I would just do as much research as you possibly can. Speak to people in your area, try to find real pilots, and there's lots of people through VATSIM that can help connect you. I mean, I know someone at basically every US and Canadian airline that I'd be happy to connect people to. Do your research, talk to people, and really just give it some thought. I think when I did what I did, it was a little easier. The industry was going in a great place.
Yeah.
It's going to be another couple of years, I feel like, before I could confidently say to somebody, just try it. But honestly, I mean, the first time I flew an Embraer 175 in the real airplane and landed that airplane, it's just an amazing experience. And then to be able to fly that into places like Washington, Dulles, where you may have seen the cool river visual approach they do there, to fly the expressway visual approach in LaGuardia. I mean, these are things very much like the approach that you're going to do, where we just hand fly the airplane. And I mean, it's crazy fun.
Yeah. Somebody's asked, do you use MSFS by any chance, Evan?
I don't personally. I control mostly, and I need to upgrade my computer to get back into flight simming, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while now. But I don't. I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of streams like this. It looks beautiful, and I'm a bit jealous that I can't, but sadly, I need to get a better computer for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing, yeah, it's quite demanding on hardware.
Yeah.
Tridamos says it's cool to have the visual charts of Samos. Yeah, guys, I've put the link to the that chart that I've posted a minute ago. The old sort of looking chart. I've put the link to that in the description for today's video, so you can have a little look at what we're going to be doing as we make our way in. I'll put it a couple of times throughout. Hopefully you find it useful. Osprey 165, request descent. Descend flight level 250, Osprey 165. So from what you've watched so far, how do you find it particularly realistic compared, or how do you
in terms of what you're doing on the stream?
Just like the way the simulator looks and seems to act from somebody that watches it. I guess it's hard to tell because you've not used it before.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried it a little bit here and there, but not enough to really get into it. I talk to a lot of people, get their experiences, and that's where I try to form my opinions from. What I've heard from many real pilots, airline pilots, streamers, all kinds of people. The beautiful visuals, just, I mean, like you can see it. I mean, the scenery is just incredible. You don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
The flight model, maybe not super realistic. The sort of what you have in terms of the tools and the aircraft simulation getting better, but not fully there yet. That being said, though, anyone who talks about flight model and home sims, the real world full motion level D sim we fly at work, it doesn't replicate the airplane all that well. I've landed the simulator at work, gone into the airplane, it's not the same. And every pilot I fly with, it's actually the same thing. So yeah, all the buttons and the knobs are there. It has the motion. I mean, it's really cool. Like the first time that you kind of walk into that thing, it's like, oh wow, there's a $25 million toy I get to play with. But the truth is that if you want something that actually feels like an airplane, the only thing is an airplane.
Yeah. Gridman, thanks for the tip. Cheers, mate. Really appreciate that as always. Thanks for supporting the stream. Really generous of you. Evan, I wanted to ask as well, what made you start Flight Sim Association?
This came out of questions we got from our show at Flight Sim Expo more than anything else. So it was people coming to the show, new simmers saying, I love the show. I mean, I love meeting all these people. How do I now actually get started? Is there a resource? Is there a guide? Is there somewhere I can go to figure this out? And that was the main part of what we started it for. The other thing was, we see all these great people like you doing amazing content on YouTube. We see people like Orbix posting on their forums. But other than Microsoft, there's not that many developers who are out there on Twitch doing live streams, and I think it's a really cool format to be able to engage with people. So we wanted to try and see if we could drag some of those developers into doing webinars with us. Again, we're not necessarily looking to try to come up with the same content that's on YouTube. Like, we'll never compete with that. Your channel alone has got way more flying tutorials than we're ever going to be able to put together. So that's not really what we're trying to do. We just want to help people discover you. Or if you're an experienced simmer, we want to say, look, let's get Aerosoft and Orbix and someone else on a panel, and let's all chat about what does the future of flight simulation look like. I think that's a really cool sort of thing that we don't see in our community right now. Microsoft is doing it. Why don't the rest of us kind of get involved and do it too?
Yeah, and it's nice to have a website that's focused on flight simming rather than it being generic across multiple platforms and things. It's just it's angled at the entire community, which is quite nice.
I mean, I'd love to see, and we've done this at Flight Sim Expo, I'd love to see Microsoft, Laminar, who makes X-Plane, and Lockheed, who makes Prepared, on a stream together talking about different
that'd be the day.
simulators. And we did that back in I think it was 2018 in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Of course, this was before Microsoft. We had Dovetail that was doing that. But I think that'd be a really fun conversation to watch and to be able to ask questions and interact with. And, guys on the stream here, we're always looking for feedback. So, if this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about is interesting, let me know. And if you guys have some ideas, let me know. We don't want to become content creators. We're never going to be able to compete with guys like Luke. So that's just not the intention. But maybe one day we get Luke and like 5 other top streamers. Maybe we'll use X-Plane and P3D together for kind of a panel discussion, and maybe you guys want to do a landing competition. I mean, anything that's kind of like cross-platform, cross-community, bringing people together. That's what we're going for.
Yeah. D. Catwood says he's subscribed. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for hitting subscribe, and great stream. I'm a member of FSA. Much prefer something like FSA with quality webinars and streams like this one compared to the forum scene. Nice work. Yeah, it's nice to have a Athens down below, folks. It's nice to have a website where there's loads of different webinars. So yesterday you were saying you had Massis from Aerosoft, so loads of variety. I think over the next few weeks you've got somebody doing combat flight simulation as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so again, kind of a similar sort of story to what we're doing here. I know nothing about the combat simulator world, or at least I didn't until I started reading about it, and never really been involved with DCS or with any of those other platforms, IL2, Stern, for example. So I just said, okay, let me go find the expert, and that is this guy with 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, probably more now, who's also a real-world CFI in San Diego.
Last time I used
and I said, hey, why don't you come on and explain, like, what is combat simulation? What are the simulators? What are the choices?
Yeah. Well, the last time I used a combat flight sim, it was Microsoft Combat Flight Simulator years ago. So that shows my my age, I guess, a little bit.
I have a question from Brent again, actually, or Brett, I should say. FSA First Officer. This is a tough one for you, so have fun with this. Where do you see Microsoft Flight Simulator in 10 years' time when it's on the Xbox Series? And sort of what do you think the platform is going to look like?
That's a really tough question. In 10 years' time, I'm really not sure where it's going to be at. They've had quite a rocky first year, I think. We all probably appreciate that. But they came out at the early days and said that they've released it early because of COVID, really. And personally, I'm thankful for that. And I've not had many issues with it, touch wood. And I've really enjoyed the sim. The graphics is an entirely whole new level than anything we've ever seen before. And the freeware scenery as well, the freeware landscape for the sim is like nothing I've ever seen. So over the next few years we've got some massive aircraft developers, PMDG, Aerosoft and Just Flight and all these other folks dropping tons of aeroplanes to Microsoft Flight Simulator, Quality Wings with a 787 coming soon. So looking at maybe the next 5 years, I don't think any other simulator is going to be able to compete. I'm not really sure. Personally, I've not used X-Plane or anything like that, so it's hard for me to judge, if I'm honest. But in the next 10 years, this sim is going to be insanely good. We're going to have all of the PMDG lineup, I would imagine, and all of the Quality Wings products coming over to the sim, and maybe some improvements to scenery. I think Microsoft have said that they're going to be supporting it for 5 years, which is a substantial amount of time, really. And then beyond that, the modders are going to keep it going forever, I think. I mean, look how long FSX has been going for, and people still fly that and love that.
Just yesterday, Matthias from Aerosoft was saying that they still have, I think their biggest customer base, if I heard him correctly, and don't quote me on this, it's either their biggest customer base or at least a very big customer base, is still FSX. And there's still just a tremendous amount of people who are using that simulator.
Yes.
Now they're not buying, regular updates anymore because most of the developers have moved away from supporting FSX. But to your point, I mean, that was released in 2006, and to this day, I get people coming to me, talking to me about Flight Sim Association, asking me questions like, "What add-ons should I purchase?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm using FSX." I'm like, "Well, why don't you move into the 21st century?"
Yeah, it's a really old simulator, but people still use it, and I think that is. Probably what we're going to be. We'll probably be saying the same thing about Microsoft Flight Simulator in 10 years from now. But with the Bing photogrammetry and things like that, I think it's going to be insanely good, especially with the way the graphics cards, CPUs, and everything are being developed at the moment. It's give it 5 years. I think this is going to be unrecognisable to what it looks like now, and it looks fantastic already as it is.
Yeah, I think there's a good, I don't think X-Plane is going away, and I don't think Prepared is going away either. They're, obviously hugely focused on the commercial military application of the sim, so that side of their business, I suspect, is going to support them for some time.
Yeah.
I don't personally see Microsoft moving in that space. And I think X-Plane is going to be around for quite a while too, because the level of fidelity in the aircraft flight model, which is one of the things that X-Plane has always been known for, plus the huge freeware community alongside it, I don't think it's going anywhere. And as the technology, I think what Asobo has done is totally revolutionized like what you can expect from a flight simulator. I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that X-Plane could do something similar. But the concept of being able to stream scenery into your actual simulator,
yes.
And I think that technology is here. So, don't know that they're going to do it, but there's a possibility. And they were supposed to do a webinar previewing a couple of things that they weren't quite ready to do with us. But the hope is that we'll have them back in a couple of weeks, and they'll be able to talk about that and give us a bit of a sneak as to what the next sneak peek into what the next X-Plane might look like.
Tom, yes, it's Athens. We've had Athens radar on for the whole way, which is really cool. So end-to-end, gate-to-gate ATC on VATSIM. Cryptic hello, and as Griderman's saying, he thinks it's only going to get better. 10 years is descend flight level 110 Osprey 165. 10 years is a really long time for tech. So Tom, I'm 30 years old, so not old, but old enough. Old enough to give up on my dream of being an airline pilot, I think.
No, you're not.
Kweku, just curious, who is talking? So you've got myself, obviously talking, and we're joined by Evan from Flight Sim Association as well, chatting along with us.
I would say you're not too old if you really wanted to do it. It's going to take a lifestyle change, obviously, and it's going to take some training, and it's going to take COVID disappearing. So there's some caveats there. But when I started, I was 26, and to give you some context, and I'm 31 now. So I think that there's absolutely possibility. A lot of it depends on where you live. Like the UK has this amazing, I think still a lot of the airlines have these cadet programs, so you can like totally shortcut a process that for me was 4 years. I know what you mean. You might be getting close, but if you wanted to do it, the opportunity's there.
Yeah.
We have a question off of FSA First Officer Alvaro. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. What program are you flying in right now for this webinar? And the guess was FSX Steam.
Oh, no, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and there's two ways you can download it. There's Steam, of course, and which is quite popular as a choice, but I've gone for the old school buy direct from Microsoft and from the Microsoft store. Alexander, thanks for the tip. Thanks for the hard work. You're both inspiring, bringing people into simulation and bringing them into a lifelong passion, real or virtual. The bot should read that out in a second as well. It's always delayed. Here we go. And it didn't even try and read it out. Naughty Streamlabs. Alexander, thank you very much. And proceed direct Delox Osprey 165. This is where now possibly we break the aeroplane. Alexander, thanks for your tip, and thanks for your kind words for both myself and Evan there. Proceed direct Delox. We've actually been given a shortcut now, so we're not even doing the VOR DME arc. We're going straight to the initial approach fix. Let's start to slow this bird down. Because of the tailwind, I've set our airspeed a little bit slower than usual, just to try and extend the time. Griderman's turned the question back on you, Evan. He said, where do you want FSA to be in 10 years from now, and what is your vision? That's a great question.
Do I have time to answer that question before you go? Do you want to start now, or do you want to talk?
Go for it if you want, yeah.
Okay, interrupt me when you need to,
okay.
And I'll try and make that a relatively quick thing. Gertie, man, I think what we can do with FSA to really try to have an impact is hopefully over time to be able to bring the community together some more. So 10 years from now, what I hope for is that folks are discovering flight simulation in part because of the work that we're doing. We have a community of experienced simmers that can help new simmers through whether it's in person or just virtual mentorship. I'd love to see chapters of flight simmers, just like we have real world chapters of places like EAA or AOPA in the United States. We have a couple. flight sim clubs already. I'd love to see that in every major city in the United States. And one of the features we have called Sim Research in FSA is actually starting to get us to that point where you can actually, if you choose to opt in, and of course there's all kinds of privacy concerns you have to go through, you can actually discover if there's other simmers who are nearby. That's a feature that we're just starting, realize that it's not for everybody here in the online world. We're real careful about privacy. But I also grew up with a phone book where you could look up anyone's name and address anytime you wanted to. So this isn't really a crazy concept to me. So I think chapters really get people together. And then when it comes to developers, my mind, the developers, they talk, but they don't talk as much as you might think. And so oftentimes we see, 2 or 3 people developing the same airplane or developing the same scenery. And kind of sometimes I wish that maybe they were actually spreading that out a little more. So I'd love to see things like cross-platform webinars happening where you might have something that is featuring 5 or 6 developers, and you can see that on 5 or 6 different, developers' Facebook and YouTube channels, and maybe content creators are getting involved by sharing that same stream and by commenting on it. So I'm not saying that we would do that every day, but imagine if like once a month there was a community-wide get-together of simmers that had 20,000 or 30,000 people watching, like some of the big gaming communities have. I think that'd be a really, really neat thing for us in our community. And then you'd have a, like even some kind of a little committee of people that would decide on who gets to be part of those and how would that work, like a true community-driven independent organization that really works to support us all and that works to hopefully grow this hobby of flight sim so that people can discover it and then they can discover what part of their niche that they want to be part of.
Yeah, and something that's never been done before as well then.
That's right. So maybe it's crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, but we'll see. I think it's a really interesting, concept. And again, you asked me for 10 years from now, so those are my pipe dreams, and that's a long time in the future. Today we're not doing any of those things right away, but we're moving in that direction and we're starting the process. I don't want to spend too much time, so again, Luke, just interrupt me if you need to. What we're doing right now, we did this about a week and a half ago, is we took some of the money from Captain subscriptions. So for those who choose to subscribe and support us, thank you for that. You get a bunch of discounts. But also what you do is you can help us by funding some advertising. So we went out and took some of that cash from Captain subscriptions. We put it on a Facebook ad. It wasn't very much. We just spent about $300 just to see what would happen. And we wrote an ad that said, all right, you want to set up a new sim. Maybe you're a real pilot. Maybe you're a student pilot. You want to use this for training. Come to a webinar and we're going to explain how this works. We had about 100 people attend that webinar. And of those 100 people, 60% of them were brand new. 60% of them found us because of those advertisements. Yeah. So that's 60 people, brand new to flight sim, never heard of this before or never thought about it. They came to a webinar. I didn't even do it. It was actually one of our hardware partners that talked about it. And of those people, they were able to discover a little bit about our community.
Nice. And people getting into the hobby as well need somewhere to start, really. So if there's one place or a resource centre, then it's only a good thing for people. There's too much sort of disjointed stuff at the moment. There's Samos on ever so slightly, almost like 11 o'clock.
Yeah, and again, like it's, we're not the only game in town, and we intentionally don't have a forum. We do have a small Discord for our subscribers just in case they want to ask questions, and for people who are sort of on the real world pilot side of things. So, I get a lot of people that come in and say, look, I don't have the time to, look around AVSIM or look around flight sim forums or go into, do all this research. Like, I just want someone to help. So we actually help them. We do like a one-on-one kind of consultation. Again, this is not for your average simmer. Like, I would never have needed this when I was getting into sim, but there's lots of people out there who are like, look, I just want it to work. I want to buy a simulator and I want to fly it. I don't really want to spend the time, with the hardware and figuring all this stuff out. So we offer like a one-on-one kind of consultation. We don't actually build a sim for them, but we can kind of figure out what their goals are. We talk about their budget. We talk about what are they trying to achieve. Do they want to fly airliners? Do they want to fly, general aviation? And then we can point them to the developers, the hardware makers, the people who do this. And there's even, more in-depth consultations that you can do with other partners of ours, like Community Aviation, for example, where they're literally doing remote flight instruction. So they have certified flight instructors doing actual flight training across the country, and that's something that's just been enabled by the pandemic, basically, and by 2021.
Nice. Jacob, thank you very much for your tip. Really appreciate your super chat. Thank you for your help with VATSIM and everything else you've done. I've learned a lot through your streams. I'm glad to hear it as always. Nice to be able to help people get confident on the network. Gridderman says, thanks Evan, great answer. Like to hear collaboration is key in your opinion and not planning to invent the wheel. And D. Coward says, Evan, that's fantastic that you got 60 new people interested in flight sim.
Another first officer question. This one's an easy one since we're flying on the network right now. Alvaro again asking, what live ATC site do you recommend specifically for beginners?
Which live ATC network?
Yeah, so I think, you know, human ATC is what he's going for.
I'm all about VATSIM. You've got multiple options really. It depends on your own preference. There's IVAO, and you've got VATSIM. Both much of the same sort of thing, depending on what region you're in. So like VATSIM in the UK, for example, is absolutely huge and very full on as well. So when it's busy, like it is today, it sounds incredibly cool. But what I would advise is to go through tutorials on YouTube, like on my channel, and a load of other stuff. Within my playlist tutorial for VATSIM, I've created a couple of PDF documents which everybody can download for free, and it basically just gives you an example of what to say, what to do for each different stage of getting your clearance, taxiing to the runway and departing, just to try and help you get started. And you know, one day if you want to dabble in oceanic, for example, and do Heathrow to JFK or vice versa, or Boston to Heathrow, then you can there's an oceanic PDF as crib sheet as well to try and help people get started. Dylan was asking, does anybody know what the Ernil 2 Alpha arrival into Samos is? I think it's a circle to land, but I didn't know. So on the charts we're going through earlier, Dylan, I've been given the Ernil 1 Charlie, which is heading south straight to Delox, but you've been given the Ernil 2 Alpha, which is the one that I've done in a tutorial before, but from ORMOS, which is where you go straight up to the Samos VOR over the airfield, and so you need to tune treble 1.6 into your radnav page, and as you hit Samos, you then go to fly this teardrop procedure here. So you fly out of Samos on a track of 160 degrees. You should be descending down to about 3,000. And then at 9 DME, you're doing a turn to fly back up towards the airfield at 358. You can see the runways are 09 and 27. So once you get almost touching the land, you need to break off and fly the procedure. It can go wrong very quickly though, so if in doubt, go around and try again. Runway length's 2,044 meters as well, so certainly long enough, but you haven't got much to play with. And we have gone straight to Delox, so draw a line from the left hand side of your screen straight to Delox, and that's kind of where we're joining. And you can see then from Delox we're just going to continue very briefly on this 14 DME arc until a radial of 189, and the aeroplane should then turn to intercept a course of 358. There's an NDB of 375 there as well, which I'm going to tune anyway. Cool. We're all prepped for our arrival, I think. 40 miles till our approach starts, or the final approach I should say. You guys will see this memo sometimes. Outer tank fuel transfer. Now if that comes on, don't be worried. All it means is, I've been quite precise with my fuel today. All it means is the outer tanks are being fed into the center tanks, because the center tanks have gone below a certain number. The aeroplane then starts to replenish, and it empties the outer wing tanks instead. So it's handling it all automatically ourselves in the Airbus. Monitor your fuel so you don't run out, of course, but we've got 2,600 kilos left. We've got absolutely plenty for a diversion to Athens. Russell's got plenty. He's left plenty of aircraft wreckage on that approach. They should erect a plaque for me. Yeah, it is. It's quite a difficult one, to be fair. Nick says the PDFs are really helpful. Thank you very much. Jacob, yeah, good point actually. You mentioned there in the US, Pilot Edge is another option for ATC. Quite expensive though, I think. I've not tried it myself, but I've heard it is really, really very good. But I think off the top of my head that has real controllers as well.
Yeah, predominantly real-world retired or current controllers. The thing about Pilot Edge, of course, you pay for it, and it is a little bit of a limited coverage area, the U.S. western half of the U.S., but the big advantage is it's guaranteed coverage. So you have 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can sign on anytime, and there's ATC there. And if you are a real pilot, I guess the other advantage of it is you don't have the same top-down structure as in VATSIM. You just call on the right frequency. So if you're talking to the ground controller, you just call on 121.90. They'll talk to you on that frequency. So it works really nicely when you're somebody who's a real-world pilot trying to get into things.
Yeah.
I personally don't know that I would pay for it when we have VATSIM, as it is. But if VATSIM doesn't work for you, if the times are difficult, and especially if you happen to love flying on the West Coast because it's so beautiful, then
Yes.
it is definitely an alternative. Infinite Flight also on the mobile app has a really big ATC community, bigger than VATSIM, believe it
I
or
didn't
not.
know that. D Catwood's asking, where are your PDFs posted? Let me find the link for you and I'll put it in the live chat. Again, they've been designed really to go hand in hand with my tutorial videos. So you can watch the videos and then you've got a reference, PDF reference, so that you can bolster what I've covered in the videos, if that makes sense. Akil is asking, where are we going? We're going to Samos for the circle to land procedure. And there's no other way into Samos other than a circling approach. There's no ILS or anything like that. And it's a manually flown final approach. It's very difficult. And we've got an 8-knot crosswind as well, which is going to make things particularly difficult as well. It's going to make the final turns particularly tricky, and if we mistime it ever so slightly, then we could either be drifting too far to the right or too far to the left in the turn for lining up on the runway. Apostolis, thank you very much, and Chiridamos, good to see you again. He's saying our ATC today, Athens Radar, is a real Airbus pilot.
And what you're about to do and demonstrate is actually something that a lot of real-world airline pilots, believe it or not, actually will struggle with. One of the things that we really are worried about in the industry is the ability to hand fly visual or visually based approaches just like this one. And so doing this stuff in the simulator, you guys might be thinking, how realistic is it to hand fly a visual approach? Actually, it's very realistic, and it's a challenge for some people who might be flying, say, a heavy airplane only 3 or 4 times at most in a month. They might get 2 landings in a month. How often do they get to do stuff like this? So when we go to LaGuardia, we fly the expressway visual. There's a really challenging approach into JFK for one of the runways. DCA, I mentioned earlier, Washington National Airport in the U.S., and I'm sure there's plenty of others
DCA's
across
got a
the world.
great approach.
A lot of these approaches require you to fly without the autopilot, and so being able to have these skills and being able to fly the airplane, it's actually something that many real-world pilots will struggle with, and it's really interesting and good to see you guys doing it in the sim.
There's less pressure in the sim as well because you're not flying a real machine with loads of people in the
Although
back.
you guys have more people judging you, so I don't know.
Very true, yeah. Well, that's it. It's either Ryanair or it's Butter.
Is bad, unless it's really bad.
And I'm tracking Volanta as well again today, so when I land I'll be showing you guys my landing rate as always, foot per minute, and the G-force on touchdown and things. And I've also got the flight recorder app programmed and ready to go as well, so I'm hoping I'll be able to record the approach and then replay it as well, which would be quite cool if it works. Having reinstalled Windows, I'm not quite sure. Let's get the nav display zoomed in here now. So we've been told to descend to 7,000 feet, and we're now at the transition so that we're on the local QNH for 1015. The little arrow on the nav display there is giving us our direction to the airport. If we zoom out slightly on the nav display, we can sort of see what's going on here. And any second, the aeroplane should put itself into decel, which is where activate approach phase gets ticked, but we can go in and actually click that ourselves. We've let our speed kick up a little bit there, so let's just fight that speed back. 7,000. Deadlock's in 7 miles, that's our initial approach fix, so we should be setting up. And I'm dubious usually of pressing the approach phase button too soon because it's got a habit of wiping the flight plan. So I'm going to give it another few seconds. After Delox cleared VOR DME 09er and reduce speed 180 knots, Osprey 165. So we're going to pass that green dot speed, and that's where the Airbus says that we're clean or not. So we go flaps 1. $7,000 and we want 3,000. So it wants flaps 2 from us with our speeds, and I'm going to go ahead and activate approach phase now, but you can see the aeroplane starts to do some weird stuff, so because of that we go into heading mode. Otherwise it tries to send us in a different direction, which can get a little bit annoying sometimes. Let's go back to Delox, then we go back to manage mode, and it should work itself out. Lovely. There's Samos, he says, as we're turning, and we now need to descend to 1,800 feet. This is the first time I've ever done this particular approach. And, okay. So this is where we need a flight plan manager, because it's tried to send us all the way back to a VOR to the west of Athens. But it's fine. If in doubt, we just take over. We're in track FPA mode now, and we can see the runway. And I'm going to go to VOR mode so I can look at our course just very briefly. Lovely. Let's step that to 3,000 first, actually.
If you want to just as a clarification, are we number 2 or number 1?
Mateo, hello, welcome. Huge admiration for the patience you have while dealing with MSFS quirks and issues. You get used to it, to be fair. Auto brake max. Not auto brake max, sorry, auto brake low, and ground spoilers armed. And I'm going to start to let the aeroplane slow down to that F speed now, so we can put it back onto manage speed mode. I've selected flaps 3 just to help really add a load of drag to the airframe. The runway's only there, a couple of miles away, and with this particular procedure you have to be set up. Reduce final approach speed and number 2 Osprey 165, and that's because he's there. So let's be aggressive with slowing down. Spitfire RF, hello to you, welcome. So we want a couple of minutes for him really, and we're still a bit close. Nick T, thanks for the tip. Let's get rid of the speed brake. We're going to go flaps 4 because he said final approach speed. Let's slow it right down, and that's going to help us increase our separation as well a little bit. 1,900 set, that's our next step down for our final approach. Let's turn. 358. Working to line up. Continue approach number 2, Osprey 165. Working to line up that blue arrow. Now we want gear down, because this is technically final approach at Samos. And I'm trying to stay as far away from him as possible. We've got literally a minute separation, which for this approach is quite tricky. Right, here we go. Let's get our missed approach charts quickly ready. Climb to 3000 on a radial of 358 degrees. Which is basically straight ahead and overfly the airport. There we go, let's get onto our track now, 358. Approaching our minimums. So you can see here we're flying in a straight line up to the runway, but actually the runway is going left to right and in the complete opposite direction. So we're going to break off. Minimums. We're at 1850 almost. You can see the aeroplane there breaking off, and we're going to be flying down there as well. So over that little town, there's a village to the left, and we're going to be watching the runway as we turn. It's all going to happen really quickly. We can't fly any slower. We might have to go around if we don't get anything else. Let's get 3000 set ready. There we go, that's better, that's worked that time. Right, here we go. It's indicating a tailwind now for approach, not ideal. 9 knots as well. 4.8, we're waiting for 4 DME on the nav display here. So, autopilot off. 4.2, 4.1, turn. Let the nose come down, and I'm aiming for the pier. And we want a track of 325. We're manually flying this now, guys. There's Wesley dead ahead on his final turn. And our next altitude check is a radial of 240, 900 foot above the ground. 100 foot of altitude, I should say. 325 track, there we go. So our heading is 320, but our track is 325 because of the wind. 900 foot per minute rate of descent, roughly 800 foot. That's our missed approach stuff ready as well. And well, we're 240 for the radial. So we're going to keep flying and descending, and when the back end of this white arrow touches 240, we need to start the next turn, and we should be at exactly 900 foot by that point. There's the runway. There's Wesley touching down. I think it's Wesley touching down. 210 on the radial. $1,000. Just make sure you don't let that drift. There's the village. 900. Just bring that rate of descent off a little bit because it's ever so slightly low on the profile. 240. So to be fair, we were pretty bang on there. And now turning. This is going to get real hectic. There's the white roof thing. 400 foot. And we're still waiting for our landing clearance.
That scenery detail looks so good.
Yeah. 30 degrees, angular bank. Cleared land, Osprey 165.
Continue taxi via Alpha, stand 1.
There we go.
Continuing taxi via Alpha
2 red, 2 white. But looking at the threshold now,
200. All stations, 6 chains.
we
It all comes down to this. No pressure.
looking at the end of the runway now for depth perception, guys.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
Yeah, my rudder pedals are definitely changed with sensitivity. Manual brakes. Try and come off here. It's almost like I was skidding on ice. We're going to vacate here at Echo. This is some freeware scenery as well. You see that approach happens really quickly. Let's get speed brakes disarmed.
All the fun ones always do.
Yes. Osprey 165 vacated at Echo. He's on a controller change, isn't he? Yes, he is. Let's get the lights off. And fire the APU up. Did you have any other questions for me while I'm with you?
Yeah, let me react to a couple of things. It was a really cool approach to watch. It's always fun watching how other people fly. I think what's really cool from my perspective as a airline pilot and VATSIM controller as well is how you handled the situation when the automation doesn't seem to be doing what it's doing. I'm not kidding you. I have watched real airline pilots sit there fiddling with the autopilot, and I'm like, dude, just fly the airplane. Like, don't worry about the fact that this isn't working right now. Like, let's just do what we know how to do. So that's really cool to watch. I see a lot of people on VATSIM who, we have to correct them and they're like, oh, the autopilot's not working. And, we're sitting there going, okay, so then take off the autopilot and fly the airplane. So that was really neat to watch. And we appreciate that for sure. And then again, the thinking ahead, right? Like looking at, okay, we might have a go around because there's an airplane in front of us on the approach. I'm going to set 3,000 feet. I'm going to be thinking about what happens. That type of thing, again, from a, real pilot perspective is really cool to see. And then from a VATSIM controller perspective, it's like, well, that's really nice because now we know that you're prepared. So if something like that does happen, we can kind of count on you to hold up your side of the bargain versus if you're behind the airplane, you're fiddling with the autopilot, you're not worried about the guy in front of you. Maybe you forget to slow down and we have a go around, and that just makes everyone's life all that much more interesting. So that was really cool to watch. Thank you for doing that. Couple comments on the FSA captain stream about how you're doing a great job, excellent presenter, nice work on the approach. And a comment as well from Alvaro who says, hey, I pronounced his name correctly, which is good, and he just subscribed as an FSA captain, so thank you to him for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, as you were saying there about autopilot and things, the sim isn't the best with that, and I think it's one of the things that I try to instill really in people is what's he doing? Is just really trying to have that bit of forethought with what's happening a couple of minutes ahead. And the Aerosoft CLJ is a prime example of that actually, and one of the guys that watches the channel quite frequently is a CLJ pilot in real life, and he's given me some great tips. And really in that aeroplane you've got to think 5 minutes or so ahead of what's going on, otherwise it can run away from you, or as you're seeing in this example, the separation not being perfect, you'll know as an airline pilot for real. If you're not thinking ahead, then things can start to catch you a little bit, and especially on VATSIM, if you can have that little bit of forethought, it helps everybody out. Especially when if they tell you to go around and you've already got your plates ready, you've got your charts up and all ready to go, you've got your altitude set and your missed approach track set, you can just fly the procedure.
Yep, for sure. I mean, of course, that's one thing about thinking ahead, another thing about, you know, doing ahead, right? So we're not going to, you know, oh, it looks like the separation is bad, I'll just slow down before the controller tells me. Like, we're not talking about that, but expecting what might be happening, getting ready to do certain things, that's what it's all about. And then, you know, if you're thinking I might need to slow down, don't make that change, of course, but think about it, be ready for it, and then maybe you want to consider, you know, a different flap setting, for example, as you did. Then when you actually get the instruction to slow down, that's of course when you do it.
Yeah.
How did you, you know, just as we wrap up here, I guess a couple of questions that I had thought of, just sort of on the YouTube side and what you've been able to accomplish in the last few months. You know, here we are at almost 7,000 subscribers in much less than a year, and I see that your name is up there pretty frequently, being mentioned by folks like Just Flight and others. How did you manage that all in such a short period of time? And maybe what advice would you have for others if they're looking to start their own channel, start their own Twitch? What can you share with them?
You know what, I don't really know, to be honest. I've pretty much just, the focus on the channel really is trying to just help everybody in the community just get more out of their simulator and have that sort of immersive experience in the sim as well, because it makes it quite enjoyable. I'm not trying to be a typical sort of like YouTube channel sort of thing where I don't really know how to explain it really. I'm trying to have the focus on everybody else. So even though it's me streaming, I'm trying to turn every flight into an experience or an event for everybody watching. And it's, you know, Just Flight, for example, it's really nice to see that they've had some great feedback for my channel and have supported me with their PA28 release. They sent me a copy of their PA28 to use, and they've reposted, retweeted some of my videos that I've done for that and things, and it's really nice. To pin it on anything that I've done, I can't really think what I might have done to do it, to be honest. I guess the people watching the channel will probably be able to answer that the best. Yeah, what makes them tune in and things. But I'll just try and be myself, really. And I make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. You know, I'm not a real pilot. And the aeroplanes I've flown in real life in the past have all been light aircraft, which, you know, is totally different to what I'm doing when I'm flying IFR in an A320 or a Dreamliner or whatever else. So I make loads of mistakes, but I try and pick up on those mistakes, learn from them from next time, get advice from real pilots, and then create tutorials to try and help people not make the same mistakes.
Yeah, and I think it's brilliant. I mean, it shows, you know, you're doing a really nice job here, and I'm
Gridman says a lot of giveaways is the answer.
Like, you're dealing with the ATC side of things, you're flying the airplane, you're interacting with the channel and the chat. Somebody, you know, from the airline world, where like anytime we're below 10,000 feet, everything is like fully focused. Like, I was afraid to talk because I'm watching you fly the approach, and it's just like so foreign to me, you know, that we would even be talking about anything. So your ability to just multitask and all that stuff is really cool, and it doesn't seem to affect your ability to fly the airplane, which is really neat. I don't think I can do that.
That's part of the real airline pilots will have a complete sterile cockpit for descent and approach, won't they? So yeah, no general discussion. It's all focused on flying the aeroplane and getting everything right. William says, consistent help towards the community has massively grown the channel in my eyes. As your first VATSIM student, you were, yeah. I can confirm you haven't stopped from there to help other people. Gridman says organising route flights, streaming when you're controlling at Birmingham. Russell says the short tutorials have been great with no information overload. Gridman answering each and every question on your Discord channel as well has helped. So yeah, so all of that really. Reese, the thing that sets the channel apart is that it never feels like you're trying to get anything out of us. You're really just here for the community. And yeah, that's yeah, we have bronze, silver and gold frequent flyer memberships, of course, where people can subscribe as a member through YouTube with monthly subscriptions, and there's perks and things associated with that, but I've always said that's voluntary. I appreciate every single person's donation for supporting the stream, but it's always it's voluntary. I enjoy simming, and I enjoy it more because I get to share the experience with all of you guys as well. And if I can inspire some people to become airline pilots, then that's even better, because it's something that I've never really been able to do myself, but wish I could have done. Will says that the channel has grown from focusing on the community-driven aspect, and I think everyone has really enjoyed your tutorials and learning how to use MSFS realistically. I really appreciate all those kind words. Let me show Volanta, because you guys will start asking about landing rating as well. And I love Volanta tracking. That blue blip there. That is Athens radar. So he's controlling every one of those aeroplanes in that piece of airspace. All of the different Greek islands and things as well. He's doing traffic for those. Let's see here. So landing minus 227 foot per minute, 1.58 G, so a little firm, but not too bad, I guess. They would have felt it though. Who's this coming in? Ah, that's Dylan. He's on his approach now as well, so we'll be able to catch him make his circling approach live. Good luck to Dylan. D. Catwood, thank you very much. Wait for the bot to catch up, it's always quite slow. Thanks for your super chat. Hopefully it reads it out, if not I will read it out on their behalf, of course. Landing rate of A350, go to the crew room chat, Wesley. I'm surprised the A350 fitted into Samos, to be honest. The model matching tool showing you as an Aegean A319 helps. So DCatwood says, great job today, appreciate that your view is that it's all about the learning here, and thanks also for your support for FSA. Please co-host again. Glad you enjoyed it. It's certainly something different and not anything that I'm used to either, I've got to say. Have they changed the runway at Samos? So I think... Oh, Dylan's sim has crashed the desktop. Ah, that's annoying. Horizon, hello to you. Hopefully you guys flew along, have enjoyed it today as well, and got a lot out of both myself and Evan as well. Evan, have you got anything else you wanted to talk about or ask or anything like that before we end the stream?
I think you've done a really nice job. I appreciate you having us on, talking a little bit about what Flight Simulation Association is trying to do. Again, we're not at all trying to be what you guys are in terms of content creators. We just want to support you in any way we can. So our job is to go out and hopefully find new flight simmers, find people who are just getting into this hobby, and point them to you so that you can do the teaching and the learning, much as you've done here. And in between that, of course, we like to try to work with some of the big developers in our community to produce webinars where they're updating on their roadmap or their latest project. So for people who are watching today, if that's something that's interesting to you, we'd love for your support by signing up for a free account, which you can do at flightsimassociation.com. And just like the case is here, there's an optional subscription that you can choose to purchase that helps us out, but by no means is that a requirement. And again, if you feel like the discounts or help you out a little bit, we'd love for your support. And otherwise, as a free member, we'd love for you to just come on and join us when we have someone like Aerosoft, as we did yesterday, or we have someone talking about the home airplane cockpit that they've built, literally a 737 cockpit built out of materials from their garage. And it'll be a gentleman that I talked to on June 3rd going through how he did that, and if that's something you'd ever be interested in, how you could possibly get started on home cockpit building as well. Thanks so much for having me on, Luke. It's been a pleasure.
That's all right. And I don't think there's any more questions in the live chat. Just everybody saying thank you, really. Brandon says, is there a way to make your model matching files have a default plane that's not the MSFS default planes? Yeah, just edit the script to whichever aeroplane you'd like to see the most, basically. And there's a tutorial on the channel showing you how to do that too. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Welcome to all of our new channel members, subscribers and things as well. And again, thanks to Evan for joining us today from Flight Sim Association. I hope you guys have all got a lot out of it. I've put the link in the live chat, flightsimassociation.com, if you guys want to check it out. There's free accounts for everybody to sign up with, and they've also got a captain account, which is a small monthly subscription, which gets you a load of extra perks as well. So there we go. Tomorrow we're going to be back in the Aerosoft CRJ. Love it, been a little while, and we're going to be doing the next leg of our Fly UK South America, Scenic South America tour. We're making our way to Montevideo, I think it is, and it's exceptionally scenic in South America, so it's very, very nice to fly around. We're going to be on VATSIM, and a few of the folks are going to join us and fly along as well during the stream. Again, thanks to Evan, and Brandon says, see you on Boston VATSIM soon, Evan. There we are. Hope you've all enjoyed it. As always, thanks everybody for watching, and hope to see you all tomorrow.
122.8.
Helicon 1 is understood. Next now, thank you.
Other stations waiting for clearance?
Block.
Any other station waiting for clearance?
DN 866, hello, καλησπέρα. Request